Hey, well, actually into today's video, going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. Also have a look at CFSB2 for the coming month. That takes us into March. We'll start off by having a look at the oceans. Haven't done that for a little while, but there's a few interesting things developing in the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans at the moment. So a bit of a mishmash of stuff ready for today's video. There's a risk of snow coming up on tomorrow night and into Thursday morning across parts of England and Wales. I've been updating Snowwatch about this over the past few days. I'll do another update on Snowwatch this evening. At the end of the video, have a very quick look at it, but I want to do a detailed look at this snow risk situation on Snowwatch this evening, so you'll be able to find that at around 7 o'clock this evening. As I say, this is going to be a mishmash of different stuff, starting off with the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. But before I get on with that, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all the pages at Gazmo Visits, helping to pay for our website. So if there's any articles that you're interested in, all you have to do is click through and go off and read the article, because you're going from Gazmo Visits to where that article is, we get a revenue fee on the fact that you are going to that website to read their article. And this is helping to keep us completely and totally free for you to see all of our updates. So thanks very much for getting involved, and thanks for doing that. So just starting off with the ocean temperatures. These are the sea surface temperature anomalies across the oceans of the world at the start of January. So just have a look at how things were looking in the oceans at the start of January, and then we'll go on and have a look at the latest chart. So three specific areas. Of course, El Nino is this very big red area just here through the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. And then in the northern Pacific Ocean, you see generally quite warm ocean temperatures up there across the northern Pacific. This is normally quite a cold place in terms of the ocean sea surface temperature anomalies. It normally looks blue up there, but at the start of the year it's generally quite warm, certainly compared to average. And then in the Atlantic, the northern Atlantic Ocean, still showing these cold sea surface temperature anomalies that set up last year, probably contributed to the fairly cool summer that we had last year, and have probably contributed to the Atlantic-driven winter that we've had this year. And those cold sea surface temperature anomalies still there across northern parts of the Atlantic at the start of the year. Well, let's take a look at the latest chart. This is again from NOAA in the United States. This was generated yesterday on the 15th of February. So we can see that El Nino has quite clearly weakened. It is weakening very, very quickly now. It's become central base, particularly through this central part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. It's cooling fairly quickly over towards the Peruvian side in the east. It is still going. We have still got El Nino there. There's enough there to say that we are still in an El Nino effect, but it certainly is cooling down rapidly, because you expect this, because El Nino usually peaks around Christmas and then gradually fades away through the course of the early part of the following year. We haven't got a cold event yet. We are not in a La Nina. We're just gradually reducing this El Nino, and certainly in the eastern part of the equatorial Pacific, beginning to revert back towards ENSO neutral. Now, notice we've had quite a lot of cooling in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. This is starting to look much more like it would normally look up here. I say it's quite a cold place in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean, from Russia to Canada, and covering Alaska as well. Clearly, there's been a big reduction in temperatures here, and those cold temperatures look as though they're starting to move more and more towards the Canadian coast as well. So I would think within a couple of weeks, we'll probably see this whole area looking quite cold. This could be the beginnings of shifting the Pacific back into a colder phase. I wouldn't necessarily say this would tie in with La Nina developing, but certainly the northern part of the Pacific Ocean looks like it's beginning to go back towards a colder setup in terms of the PDO. Now, to really see a cold event, which is a La Nina event in the equatorial Pacific, we want to find these cold sea surface temperature anomalies beginning to gather around here. We haven't got a great deal of evidence of that just yet. So if we start to see this blue area here expanding, it's quite small at the moment. If this starts to expand and begins to push up towards the equatorial part of the Pacific at the same time that these cold waters in the northern Pacific begin to push south in that sort of motion, then the pincer movement could really collapse this El Nino and start to set up a cold event through the summer. That's important, as I've explained in the recent summer update that I did a few weeks ago. It's important because when we shift to La Nina during the summer, it seems to coincide with very poor summers. If we get a rapid shift from El Nino to La Nina through the summer, it's something that seems to really coincide with very, very bad summers in the United Kingdom. Conversely, though, if we just remain at ENSO neutral, so we just fade from El Nino into El Nino neutral type condition, then that tends to go with hotter summers. There's only two of them where that's happened, 1983 and 2003. But those two summers were El Ninos that faded just to El Nino neutral. So we've got to keep an eye on what's going on there. I say not a great deal of evidence of a cold event setting up yet in the equatorial Pacific, but watch your space, because I think this cold water up here particularly could be the first signs that the Pacific is starting to move back into a colder phase. The Atlantic is looking very cold in the northern part of the Atlantic. Around here, those cold waters have expanded. Interestingly, they're also moving towards the northern part of Scotland, so up around here it's beginning to cool down as well. But quite interestingly, off the African coast, we begin to get quite a lot of warming there. Now, that's in fairly shallow waters at the moment. If this starts to push out in towards the tropical part of the equatorial Pacific, so if this area starts to warm just here, particularly if we get a La Nina setting up, that could really impact the hurricane season in the Atlantic, and we could have a much, much more active hurricane season than we've had over the past 2 or 3 years. If we warm the tropical Atlantic up, we could really start to generate some big hurricanes, especially if that coincides with the onset of a cold event in terms of La Nina through the summer. So watch your space on what's going to happen with the oceans over the next few months. They do have a big bearing on our weather. The CFS V2 isn't going for La Nina at the moment. What it's seeing is that just fade back really towards ENSO neutral. So these are the temperatures on the side, dates are along the bottom. That's where we are around now, in that sort of zone. So we are dropping down towards, not towards neutral, but we are going back to weaker El Nino conditions. You see that drop is generally expected to continue. So by the time we get through to the summer, this is July just here, we're back more or less towards El Nino neutral, ENSO neutral. We're just around half of a degree above average. But to get a cold event, we would need to be doing something like this. We need to see this black dash line going down into that sort of zone. There's no evidence of that at this stage, but it is very early days, and very often you have to get past the spring before these models really hone in on what's going to happen with the ENSO region through the summer and into the autumn. So just because the CFS V2 isn't going for La Nina yet doesn't necessarily mean that we won't get a La Nina. Let's just wait and see what happens. Have a look at CFS V2 for the next month, coming closer to home. These are the 500 millibar high anomalies broken down into weekly periods for the coming month. So this is the first weekly period going from the 16th to the 22nd of February, the week that we're in. As you know, with these charts, blue extrapolates to low pressure and red extrapolates to high pressure. So what we're seeing for the coming week is a trough of low pressure being predicted to the northwest of the country, a big ridge there out to the east, and a ridge through the central part of the Atlantic as well. It means the jet stream's going a bit like that, so it explains why it's a fairly cool week coming up, albeit it will be starting to turn milder over the weekend. It's a very cool week though, because the jet stream is generally going a little bit to the south of the country, and the mild temperatures are being pushed off, or have been pushed off, towards the east of Europe. So quite an unsettled and fairly cool week coming up there. The second week, going through to the end of February, this is the 23rd through 29th of February, has a more typical pattern really, with low pressure still to the north of Scotland, but it's generally more westerly. So we've got ridging to the southwest and to the southeast of the country, with the jet stream going a bit like that. So the jet stream is moving back northwards and more or less going through the country. So it would still be unsettled. Driest weather, of course, in the southeast, close to this ridge of above average heights. But it's a more typical pattern, and I would think that's milder, really, for the end of February. Week 3, the 1st through to the 7th of March, looking like this, with a trough more or less, top of the country, so that's very unsettled. Jet stream probably a little bit to the south of us again, so quite cool. Very unsettled conditions going through to the start of March. And then week 4, which is the 8th through to the 14th of March, looks like this. Quite a lot of high pressure to the north on this one. A big blocking feature is setting up there over the top of the North Pole. That's very extensive northern blocking. That could tie in with that sudden stratospheric warming event that we had about a week ago. It takes a while for that to filter down into the troposphere. So around the middle of March is when you would expect the effects of that to be felt. Big blocking feature up there. As far as we're concerned though, the trough of low pressure is centred to the west, and we've still got this ridge down across Spain. So for us, actually, despite all of that blocking, the flow is probably still Atlantic. It's probably still unsettled and fairly mild. But keep an eye on that blocking. That is very, very extensive ridging setting up there right over top of the pole, and it would only take very slight adjustments to start to force cold air with that blocking out of the pole and down into the mid-latitudes. I reckon if that sort of extent of blocking set up over the top of the pole, that could really start to push some very cold air down into the mid-latitudes through the middle part of March. So watch your space on that one. Talking of cold, we've got some chilly weather probably coming up again next week. So well, we're in a cold week this week. We're probably going to get some sort of snow situation on Wednesday night and Thursday. As we get through to weekend though, we will get a milder push. So this is the GFS chart for Saturday, bringing these mild westerlies through the country. As we go through into Sunday, still be very mild in the south, but turning cooler behind quite an active cold front potentially in the north. So expect risk of rain and gales to be pushing southwards on Sunday. We go through to Monday, and then we're in a colder air mass again. Deep trough of low pressure over Scandinavia. If you follow the isobars back, the winds are originating from the north. So quite cold air coming back down across the country through the start of next week. And then, similar to what's going on this week, we start to move areas of low pressure into that cold air. So, again, we've got ridging here to the north. We've got low pressure coming through the country with the jet stream rather like that. So, cold air is coming down from the north, mild air pushing up from the southwest. In between, there's a battle going on, and there could be some snow again there as we go through into the middle part of next week. That is particularly more likely for the north of the country. But again, watch your space and see how that's developing. Middle of next week, building a ridge through. That's quite a cold ridge. And then we go through to the second half of next week. This is Thursday, bringing the next area of low pressure in across the country. Again, that's bumping up against quite cold air. So it's not a classic cold pattern by any means that we've got through this second half of February, but very gradually we are turning into quite a cold scenario really. These areas of low pressure continually coming up against these wedges of cold air and slipping southwards. So this is a very similar scenario to the end of next week. This is day 10, Friday 26th of February. We're ending next week on this particular run of the GFS, very similar to how we have been this week, with high pressure to the north, low pressure diving down to the south as this trough, and bringing in these easterly northeasterly winds. We haven't got a severe depth of cold air. If I show you the upper air temperatures with this scenario, it isn't a severely cold scenario by any means, just as it isn't this week, but it's probably cold enough to be bringing wintry conditions, certainly to the northern part of the country, and night frost. And overall, the temperatures are trending downwards here for February. Have a look at the ECMWF. We've got to go to Weather Central's website itself for the ECMWF, and they are changing website. So this is the beta version, the new version of weathercentral.de. This is looking pretty good, actually. It's been a long time since it's had an update to Weather Central, and this is really bringing them into the modern era. I think it's responsive as well, so this works responsively for all screen resolutions, as does Gas Weather. This, of course, we went responsive last year. So if the ECMWF is just here, what you have to do is click ECMWF on the side bar, and that'll take you to the ECM charts. There they are. This is at 96 hours Saturday. Again, fairly mild flow on Saturday, bringing that westerly through the country. As we go through into Sunday, again, there's that active cold front coming down from the north. It should be very mild in the south, probably for much of Sunday, but a band of wind and rain moving south, introducing colder air. Monday turns colder again. There's those ice bars backing off to the north and the northwest, so a colder push of air coming through on Monday next week. Tuesday keeps us in that colder flow. Again, there's the low pressure coming in off the Atlantic, moving into that cold air, which is coming down from the north. As we go through to Wednesday, again, very similar to the GFS, so there's low pressure coming through here, meeting the cold air to the north, and mild air coming up from the south. There could be some snow in with that, depending on where the dividing line between the cold and the mild air is. And then we go through into Thursday, and then finally Friday, day 10, Friday 26th of February, and it's still looking pretty chilly really. The next area of low pressure is driving in off the Atlantic, and that one is coming up against pretty cold air once again. So a bit of a battle setting up again through the course of next week between milder air and colder air. If you have a look at the upper air temperatures on day 10, you can see they are quite cold there. There's the -5 isotherm, indicating at the very least there could be some snow moving in through the course of next week. So, well, I thought yesterday we'd probably have a milder week next week. I'm not all that certain about that now. It looks like it's trending colder again for next week. And as I say, very gradually we are shifting into a fairly cool end to the winter and a fairly cool end to February. Nothing dramatic, nothing severely cold, but certainly enough to be bringing the temperatures down much, much closer to average compared to what we've had throughout most of this winter. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens for next week, of course. Hope you found the video interesting. I'll just leave you with this. This is from the Weather Outlook. This is the precipitation type forecast for 6 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. Notice rain and snow there across central and eastern parts of England. We will be having a look at that in depth on Snow Watch tonight. So if you want to know what's happening on Wednesday night and Thursday in terms of risk of snow, come back to Snow Watch this evening. Hope you found the video interesting. Been quite a long one, but a lot to digest there. Hope you found it informative. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.